Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. My name is Carmen. I'm 33 years old and I live in Seattle, where I manage my own investment firm. I had just wrapped up a successful meeting in my downtown office, reviewing reports and analyzing new opportunities for my portfolio. Everything was falling into place. The numbers looked good, and my clients were happy, so I was feeling pretty proud of the day. Then the phone rang. I wasn't expecting any calls, especially not from Diego, my older brother. We rarely spoke unless it was family related, and we hadn't been on the best terms since Dad's funeral a couple of years ago. But the urgency in his voice when I answered the phone threw me off guard. Carmen, we need to talk about Mom's finances, he said, his voice tight with worry. I raised an eyebrow. What about Mom's finances? I asked, wondering what could be so urgent. She's been struggling to keep up with things, Diego replied, a slight edge to his words. I think it's time we take over. Jessica and I will manage everything from now on. I blinked, confused. What are you talking about? Mom's been handling her own finances just fine. There's no reason to. Carmen, you're not getting it, Diego interrupted, his tone growing more impatient. She can't manage this anymore. She's 72, and she's not the woman she used to be. You haven't seen it. You don't live with her, but I do. I'm telling you, she can't keep up, so Jessica and I are taking control. A strange knot tightened in my stomach. Diego, what are you saying? I asked, feeling my voice start to shake. Are you saying she can't manage her own money? Because I don't believe that. I've talked to Mom. She's doing fine. Diego was silent for a moment, and then he sighed. Carmen, you're being stubborn. Mom's not making the right choices, and it's only going to get worse. Jessica and I will step in, take over, and make sure her finances are in order. We'll handle her assets and make the right decisions for her future. I felt the heat rise in my chest. Diego, stop. What are you even talking about? You're saying you and Jessica are going to take control of Mom's money without even asking her? He didn't hesitate. Yes, I don't have time to explain every little detail right now, but we've made up our minds, and we're not going to leave it up to you. I could hear the finality in his voice, like this decision had already been made and I was irrelevant to it. It was as though my opinion didn't matter at all. I suddenly felt the weight of the moment settle in. No, I said, shaking my head even though he couldn't see me. I won't let you do that. You can't just take control of her life like this. Diego's voice went cold. You don't have to get involved. We'll take care of it. You're too busy with your investment world to care about family. Just let us handle this. And that was when I knew Diego had already made up his mind. It wasn't about Mom. It wasn't about what was best for her. It was about him and Jessica, trying to take control of something they thought they were entitled to, something that I'd been quietly managing, even if they didn't know. The conversation was over before I could say much more. As soon as Diego hung up, I sat there in silence, the weight of his words hanging in the air. I felt blindsided, betrayed even. But more than anything, I felt a strange sense of dread creeping up on me. This wasn't just about money. It was about family, control, and the things that always simmered under the surface of our relationships. I had no idea what to do next, but I knew this was only the beginning. Something had shifted, and now it was up to me to figure out where I fit into this twisted new dynamic. The tension from the call with Diego lingered in the back of my mind like a dark cloud, and by the time I sat down at my desk the next day, I could feel my frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Diego's sudden claim that Mom couldn't manage her own finances stung, but what really got under my skin was how easily he assumed he and Jessica were entitled to take over. Like I'd been on the sidelines all these years, oblivious to the true situation. But he didn't know the whole story. I pulled up the financial reports on my laptop, transactions from the past 3 years. The numbers were all there. Mortgage payments, tuition, car bills, everything I had quietly covered for Diego and Jessica without their ever knowing. They had no idea I was the one who had been funding their lifestyle. I could feel my pulse quicken as I composed the message to Diego. Carmen, Diego, you're wrong. The real issue isn't Mom's spending, it's your and Jessica's dependency on her. I've been covering for both of you for the last 3 years, quietly paying your bills without you even realizing it. I hit send and leaned back, watching the screen as the seconds dragged on. When Diego finally replied, his message came quickly, but it was full of disbelief. Diego, what the hell are you talking about? You're saying we've been relying on Mom? That's impossible. Why would you even say something like that? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady as I typed my response. Carmen, you think I'm lying? Fine, look at this. Attached, I've sent you the payment history from my investment fund account. Over the past 3 years, I've covered your mortgage payments, Jessica's tuition, the car payments, you name it. None of this is about mom not managing her finances. It's about you two being financially irresponsible and hiding behind her, using her as a safety net without ever taking accountability. I hit send again and braced myself. When Diego replied, I expected some form of disbelief, but I didn't expect the panic. Diego, this is bullshit. I can't believe you'd try to throw this on me. You really expect me to believe that you've been doing this without saying a word? You've been paying for everything? Why didn't you ever tell me? I stared at the screen, angry, but calm. This wasn't the time to back down. I needed him to see the truth. Carmen, because I didn't want to make you feel small, Diego. I didn't want to be the one who constantly stepped in to rescue you when you were too proud to ask. But now you've pushed me too far. You're accusing Mom of not being able to manage her own life, when in fact, you and Jessica are the ones who've been living off her for years. Your financial irresponsibility is the problem, not Mom. And now, you've got the nerve to tell me what's best for her? I could almost hear his breathing quicken through the screen. His next response came through in chunks, like he was typing as fast as he could to catch up with his thoughts. Diego, this is insane. You can't just throw this all on me, Carmen. It's not like we asked you to do any of this. I scoffed as I read his message. I had had enough of the blame game. I typed back, firm and cold. Carmen, you didn't ask. You never had to. You were never going to. Because I knew you wouldn't. I'm the one who stepped in every time you two needed help. You didn't have to ask because I always just paid. But you're right about one thing. You didn't ask. And I'm done being your fallback plan. I watched the screen for a moment before deciding I wasn't done yet. This was bigger than Diego's stubbornness. It was about all the years I'd spent holding up this family, only to be dismissed when it mattered most. I hit send again. Carmen, and by the way, I've already notified your mortgage company that I'm no longer covering your payments. You'll need to figure out how to handle that on your own, Diego. No more relying on me to bail you out. And Jessica, she can start paying for her own tuition too. I hit the send button and felt a strange sense of release. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was taking control of the situation. A few minutes later, I got a call from Diego. It rang once, twice, then I picked up. Carmen, I'm done, Diego. You've crossed a line this time. His voice was shaky but determined. You don't get it, Carmen. You really don't. You think you can just pull the rug out from under us like that? We're in debt. You can't leave us like this. I sat back, feeling a mix of frustration and empowerment. I don't have to fix everything for you, Diego. I'm not your safety net. I've been your backup for far too long, and now you're going to have to face the consequences. Maybe it's time you both take responsibility for your own lives. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, Diego's voice cracked. Diego, you're not going to help us anymore, are you? I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly swallowed by my resolve. Carmen? No, Diego, I'm not. You've made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. With that, I hung up. As I sat there staring at the phone in my hand, I couldn't shake the sense that this moment was a turning point. My family's financial web was starting to unravel, and it was only going to get messier from here. The phone call came right after I'd sent Diego those damning financial records. My heart was still racing from the weight of exposing the truth that Diego had never been privy to, but he was about to face head on. His disbelief was one thing, but I knew the real fight was just beginning. When the phone rang, I didn't hesitate to pick up. I could tell from the first ring that Diego was already stewing. The second I answered, his voice was full of anger. Carmen, you've got to be kidding me. You really went there? You're telling me you've been paying for everything all these years, and you're just now telling me? I let his words hang in the air. The anger, the disbelief, it was all for show. He couldn't deny it, not when I had the proof right in front of me. I kept my voice calm but firm. Yeah, Diego, I've been paying your mortgage, Jessica's tuition, your car payments, all of it, for the past 3 years. You never had to ask, you just got it. And now, you've got the audacity to act like you're entitled to Mom's money, like I'm the one in the wrong here? Don't turn this around on me, Diego shouted. You're lying. This doesn't even make sense. Why would you keep this from me, Carmen? Why didn't you just tell me? You're manipulating the situation. I could hear his voice breaking, the panic setting in. He wasn't handling it well. I wasn't about to let him off the hook. I didn't tell you, Diego, because you never wanted to hear it. You never wanted to admit that you and Jessica were living off of me. You thought I would just keep writing checks and cleaning up your messes, but not anymore. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear Diego's breath quicken, his disbelief slowly turning into panic. No, no way. This isn't real, he muttered under his breath. I can't believe you'd keep something like this from me. Believe it, I said coldly. And you know what? I'm done. I've already notified your mortgage company that I'm pulling the plug. They're going to be expecting payments from you now, Diego. Wait, what? His voice was strained, panicked. You can't do that. You can't just. Oh, but I can, I cut him off. I'm not going to keep playing the role of the sugar mama. I've been bailing you out for years and you never even thanked me for it. Now you and Jessica are going to face the consequences of your own financial decisions. I'm not your backup anymore. You're making a huge mistake, Carmen, he said, his voice shaking. Do you know what this will do to us? You can't just leave us hanging like this. We've been relying on you, and now you're going to just pull away? I felt a flicker of guilt, but I quickly suppressed it. This wasn't about me. It was about standing up for myself, for my own hard-earned success. It was about taking control of my life. Good luck, Diego. You and Jessica will figure it out. You'll have to live with the consequences of your actions. And as for Mom, you and Jessica will have to figure out how to manage her finances without me. I hung up the phone before he could respond. My heart was racing, but this time, it wasn't from panic. It was from the strange sense of power that came with setting a boundary. I'd always been the one to say yes, to help out, to clean up after everyone. But this time, I was saying no. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. It wasn't long before my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jessica leaving a voicemail. Her voice was shaky, desperate. Carmen, please, please pick up. I don't know what's going on with Diego, but you can't just leave us like this. We need your help. I didn't listen to the full message. Instead, I deleted it, my hand shaking slightly as I did. There was no turning back now. The reality of what I had just done started to sink in. Diego and Jessica were going to be forced to face their financial irresponsibility. There would be no more bailouts, no more empty promises. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about putting an end to the manipulation and entitlement that had controlled my relationship with them for far too long. But I knew that what I had done was only the first step. The hardest part would come next, when they had to face the consequences of their actions, and when I would have to face what it meant to be truly cut off from the people I had always tried so hard to protect. As I sat there staring at the phone screen, I knew this wouldn't be the last time I'd hear from them. But I was done. I had set my boundaries. Now it was time for them to learn how to respect them. It had been a week since my phone call with Diego, and I could feel the weight of everything starting to settle in. The adrenaline from our heated exchange had worn off, replaced by an odd mixture of empowerment and disappointment. I had made my choice, drawn my line in the sand, and now I had to live with it. But what came next, the fallout, was something I wasn't prepared for. Diego and Jessica had been forced to face their financial irresponsibility head-on. I wasn't sure how they were dealing with it, but the silence from both of them felt like a loud, constant reminder that things had changed. The phone calls had stopped. No more texts, no more begging. I had cut them off, completely, and it was strange. The absence of the usual demands was deafening, but it didn't feel as good as I thought it would. I hadn't expected them to take it well, of course, but the reality of what I'd done, the isolation it caused, the rift it created, had left me questioning my decision. I could feel the pangs of guilt creeping up on me at odd moments, particularly when I thought about my mother. She still didn't know the full extent of what I had done. She didn't know how deep the cuts went, and the longer I waited to tell her, the harder it became. But one thing was clear. Diego and Jessica had finally started to feel the consequences of their financial dependency. I hadn't heard from Diego in days, but I saw the notification on my phone, a reminder of a past I couldn't escape. It was a message from Jessica. Jessica, Carmen, please, you have to help us. Diego and I can't make the payments. The mortgage, the car, everything's piling up. You have to help us. This is all falling apart. We didn't know who else to turn to. I read it, feeling nothing but a hollow pit in my stomach. A year ago, I would have sent money, no questions asked. But now I just stared at the words on the screen, seeing through them like a transparent web of manipulation. They had no one left to turn to, and they knew that. They knew I was their only way out, but I couldn't be their fallback anymore. I had told them the truth. I wasn't going to fund their lifestyle anymore. I didn't respond. I just deleted the message. But it wasn't the message that bothered me. It was the realization that I had for so long been the person everyone turned to when things went wrong. I had always been the stable one, the reliable one. I worked hard, kept my head down, and never asked for anything in return. And now they were learning, slowly, painfully, that I couldn't keep holding them up anymore. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled deeply, staring at the ceiling. My company had been thriving, and while that should have made me feel accomplished, the truth was that it didn't bring me peace. I had built this life on my own, a successful business that helped people, clients I respected, projects I was proud of, but with my family, the one thing I thought would always be there, I felt empty. My success had become my shield, something to keep me safe from the mess they always seemed to bring into my life. Despite my financial independence, I lived in a way that almost no one knew the truth. I didn't flaunt my success, didn't advertise it to anyone. I kept things low-key, minimal. I had a small apartment, a simple lifestyle. My coworkers knew me as hardworking and driven, but not much more. I never wanted to be seen as the woman who had it all, especially when my family couldn't even get their act together. But it was moments like these, the realization that I had to go this far to protect myself, that made me question if all the sacrifices had been worth it. When the silence stretched into days, I began to feel a strange kind of peace. It was unsettling, but the quiet felt like a balm. My phone wasn't constantly buzzing with requests, my inbox wasn't filled with more demands, and for the first time, I didn't have to worry about what would happen if I said no. The peace didn't last. It never does. One afternoon, about a week after the last message from Jessica, I got a call. It was my mother. I hadn't heard from her in days either. I answered, bracing myself. "Mom? Carmen? We need to talk." I could hear the tremor in her voice, and I immediately knew something had changed. She hadn't called like this in years, ever since Dad passed. This wasn't a routine check-in, it was serious. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my chest tightening. "No, Carmen. No, it's not," she said, her voice shaky. I I don't know what to say. Diego and Jessica they're in trouble." I sighed, feeling that familiar weight in my chest. "What happened?" They they told me everything about the money, about what you've been doing for them all this time, and I didn't know. I didn't know how bad it was. They never told me. I closed my eyes, the guilt gnawing at me. "Mom, I didn't want to keep it from you, but I couldn't keep enabling them. I didn't understand, Carmen. I didn't see how deep it went. I should have paid more attention. I just didn't know what you were carrying on your own. I never realized how much you've done for them, for all of us." I could feel my mother's shame and confusion. It wasn't just the shock of learning the truth. It was the guilt of not being there for me when I needed her, when it mattered. "You've always been so strong, Carmen," she whispered. I thought you were okay. I didn't know. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want to burden you," I said softly. "I just wanted to help. And now, I don't know if I can anymore." The line went silent for a moment. Then, my mother's voice cracked. "I'm proud of you, Carmen. I am. But I don't know what happens now. I don't know where we go from here. Everything's changed, hasn't it?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "It has." The truth hung in the air, and I could feel the distance between us growing. It was like I was standing on one side of a chasm, and no matter how much I tried to reach out, there was no way to cross it without losing something. "I'll be okay, Mom. You don't have to worry about me," I said, trying to soothe her, even as my own heart ached. "But Diego and Jessica, they have to figure things out on their own now. I know, I just wish we didn't have to lose everything to get to this point." The quiet hung heavy between us. I didn't know how to answer her, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about family, about everything that had gone unsaid for years, and the damage that had been done in silence. And I couldn't keep pretending it was okay. Not anymore. The phone call came late that afternoon, and the moment I saw the name on the screen, I knew it was my mother. I hadn't heard from her since the last time I spoke to her, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation was going to be different. I braced myself, picking up the phone. "Hi, Mom." There was a long pause on the other end before her voice cracked. "Carmen, I don't know what to say. I I don't know how to even process this. I could hear the tears in her voice, the emotion barely held back. What's going on, Mom? I asked, already feeling the anxiety creeping in. She sniffled. I didn't know. I didn't know about the money, about everything you've been doing for Diego and Jessica, all these years, and I never knew. My stomach twisted. I had hoped to keep it from her, to spare her from knowing the truth. But now there was no escaping it. Mom, I didn't want you to find out like this, I said softly, trying to steady my own emotions. But I couldn't keep it from you. They've been relying on me for everything, and I couldn't keep doing it. I I don't know how to process this, she said again, and I could feel her disbelief echo through the phone. Why didn't you tell me? I would have helped. I could have helped. I didn't want to burden you, Mom, I said, my voice thickening. You were already handling your own life, your own retirement, and I didn't want you to have to worry about them. She sighed heavily. I should have been there for you, Carmen. I should have realized what was happening. But now it's all falling apart, and I don't know what to do. The guilt weighed on me. I had kept so much of it hidden from her, thinking I was protecting her from the chaos. But now it felt like I had created an even bigger mess. I didn't want it to go this far, Mom, I said, my voice quiet but firm. But I had to draw a line. I've been their safety net for too long. I can't do it anymore. And you shouldn't have to either. I'm proud of you, Carmen, she said, the pride in her voice unmistakable. You've done so much for this family, but I'm confused. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep all of this from me? I paused, gathering my thoughts. I guess I didn't want to feel like I was the one who was always asking for help. I've always been the one to step in, to take care of things. But Diego and Jessica, they never saw it the way I did. They just kept taking. And I couldn't keep letting that happen. I didn't realize, she said softly, almost to herself. I didn't see how much you were carrying, how much you were doing behind the scenes. I thought I was doing enough, but I wasn't, was I? No, Mom, I said quietly. You weren't. You've been looking at things from a different angle, and I guess I've been doing the same too. But I can't fix everything anymore, and neither can you. She was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was tinged with regret. I've always been proud of you, Carmen, but I didn't know the whole truth. I didn't know what you were really going through, and now I feel like I've failed you. No, Mom, I said quickly. The last thing I wanted was for her to feel guilty. You didn't fail me. You've always done the best you could, but I should have been more open with you. I should have told you sooner. She sighed, her voice growing softer. I just don't know what to do with all of this. Diego and Jessica are in trouble. They need help. They'll have to figure it out themselves, Mom, I said, my voice firm. They've been depending on me for far too long. They've had their chance to get their act together, and now it's time for them to face the consequences. I don't know what to say, Carmen. I know you're right, but it's hard to see them like this. It's hard to watch everything fall apart. I know, Mom, I said quietly. I don't want to see them fall apart either. But they need to stand on their own 2 feet, and maybe this is what it's going to take for them to realize that. There was a long pause, and I could hear the weight of the situation hanging heavily on both of us. My mom was still reeling from the truth I had laid bare, but I knew that for both of us, there was no turning back. I'll be okay, Mom, I said softly. I'll always be here for you. But I can't keep enabling them. And I don't think I can go back to pretending everything's fine. I know, she whispered. I know, Carmen, and I'm sorry. I should have seen it sooner. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It's not your fault. You didn't know. But now we have to face it together. I'm so proud of you, Carmen. So proud of everything you've done. And I'll support you through this, even if it's hard. I'll be here, okay? I nodded, though I knew she couldn't see me. I'm proud of you too, Mom. And I'll always be here for you, no matter what. The conversation ended with a mix of sadness and resolve. But as I hung up the phone, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't about the years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the silent expectations. It was about finally taking control. Finally stepping away from the chaos that had defined my relationships with Diego and Jessica for so long. But even with that control came uncertainty. I couldn't predict how this would all play out. I couldn't predict whether things would ever be the same with my family. What I did know was this: I couldn't go back to the way things were. The path forward was unclear, but for the first time, I felt like I was walking it on my own terms. The silence between us all would continue for a while, but I had made my choice. And now, I had to live with it. The tension that had settled in after the call with Diego and Jessica was palpable. The silence between us all felt like an unbearable weight. Diego and Jessica hadn't reached out to apologize, and my phone had stayed surprisingly quiet. No more texts begging for help, no more attempts to shift the blame. It was a strange peace, but it was also a lonely one. I was caught between the relief of finally standing up for myself and the nagging worry that things with my family might never be the same again. Still, there was a part of me that knew I couldn't walk away completely. As much as I had taken a step back, as much as I had drawn my boundaries, part of me still wanted to help. The problem was that helping didn't mean enabling. I couldn't keep giving them money or covering their mistakes. What I could offer was advice, the kind of advice they needed if they were ever going to get their act together. It was time to face them again. But this time, it wasn't going to be about bailing them out. It was going to be about rebuilding what had been broken. If they were willing to listen, I was ready to guide them back to financial independence. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be pretty, but it was the only way forward. I picked up the phone and dialed Diego's number, my heart pounding as the line rang. "Carmen," he answered, his voice tight. "What's this about?" "I want to talk," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I've been thinking. I don't want to walk away completely, but I can't keep doing this. You and Jessica need to face the reality of your situation." "I already told you, Carmen." Diego's voice was defensive. "We're trying to handle this. It's just hard. You don't understand." "I do understand," I said, cutting him off. "You've been relying on me for years, but you've never had to face the consequences of your financial irresponsibility. I'm not going to keep covering for you. You need to make real changes." There was a long pause before Diego spoke again. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'll help you both, but only if you take responsibility for what's happened. No more lies, no more hiding. You need to sell your house, downsize, and start from scratch. Jessica needs to get her business back on track, and you need to find a stable job. I won't give you money, but I will give you guidance. If you're willing to do the work, I'll help you get back on your feet." Diego was silent, but I could feel the tension in the air, the weight of what I was asking him to do. "You're serious?" he asked, disbelief lacing his voice. "I'm serious," I said firmly, "but it's up to you. You have to make the choice." There was another long pause before Diego finally spoke. "I don't know if we can do it, Carmen. This is all so much." "I know it's a lot," I replied, trying to soften my tone. "But you don't have a choice. If you want things to change, it has to start with you. No more excuses, no more blaming others." "I'll talk to Jessica," Diego muttered, his voice reluctant. "We'll figure it out, but this isn't going to be easy." "I know," I said, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over me. "But it's the only way." We hung up, and I sat there staring at my phone. A sense of both relief and uncertainty filled me. I had laid the foundation for a new chapter, but whether Diego and Jessica would actually follow through was still up in the air. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about restoring the broken pieces of our family. I had given them a chance, but it was now up to them to take it. A couple of days later, Diego called me again. His voice was different, hesitant, but for the first time, honest. "I talked to Jessica. She's not happy about selling the house, but she gets it. We're going to start downsizing. It's not going to be easy, but we're ready to make changes. It's going to take time, but we'll get there." I could feel the shift in his tone. He was still defensive, but there was an openness there now, a willingness to face the consequences of their actions. For the first time, I felt like we were having a real conversation about our future, not just about money. "That's all I can ask for, Diego," I said softly. "You're on the right path. I'll help you with advice, but you need to make this work. No more shortcuts." "I get it," he said quietly. "Thanks, Carmen. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I see now." "Good," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Now, let's make sure we don't go backward." As I hung up the phone, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward for our family. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could heal. It had been a few weeks since I laid down the hard truths with Diego and Jessica. They had agreed to make changes, sell their house, downsize, and find work that could support their new, leaner lifestyle. But of course, the process wasn't going to be simple. The silence between us remained heavy, especially after everything that had been exposed. Diego and Jessica were still adjusting to the reality of what I'd set in motion, and I had been left to wonder if I had made the right decision. Then, unexpectedly, Diego reached out. It was a Monday morning when I saw his name on my phone. I had been expecting this call for a while, but I wasn't prepared for what he would say. His voice sounded different, softer, and filled with something that resembled regret. Carmen, he started, his tone hesitant. Can we talk? I need to say something. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything still hanging between us. I'm listening. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, Diego continued. About the way I treated you, about how I assumed, well, everything. And I can't keep running away from the fact that I was wrong. You didn't deserve what I said. I'm sorry. I hadn't expected an apology, not like this. Diego's voice cracked slightly, and it struck me. This was genuine. I'd heard him speak with defensiveness, with anger, but now I was hearing vulnerability. I didn't see it, Carmen, he said, his voice quieter now. I didn't see how much you've done for us. I just expected everything to stay the same because you always helped. And I thought that was how it was supposed to be. But now, I get it. I get how wrong I was. My chest tightened. The years of resentment, the silent burdens I'd carried. They felt heavier now, but also lighter somehow. I wasn't sure how to react, so I stayed silent, letting him speak. I've been an idiot, Diego said, and I could hear the weight of that admission. I've been selfish, and I took you for granted. I thought I was entitled to things, but I wasn't. And you've been holding it all together. I'm sorry. It felt like a shift in the air, like something had cracked wide open. But even then, there was a part of me that was cautious. This was a huge step, but it was just the beginning. I appreciate you saying that, Diego, I said after a moment, keeping my voice even. But I need to hear more. I need to know you understand what's at stake here. This isn't just about money. This is about trust, about respect. You need to show me that you're ready to be different, not just say the right words. I know, he responded quickly. I'm not asking you to just forget, but I want to rebuild. I want to make things right, even if it takes time. I'll do whatever it takes. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Actions speak louder than words, Diego. I've been saying that for years. If you want to make it up to me, you need to prove that you're ready to take responsibility, not just for your finances, but for how you treat the people who've been there for you. There was a long pause. I'll prove it, he said. I want to earn your trust back. I've been stupid, and I've taken you for granted for far too long. It wasn't an easy decision, but I felt something inside me start to thaw. I knew I couldn't just keep holding on to the hurt and the anger. If Diego was truly going to change, if he was willing to put in the work, then I needed to allow space for that. I'll be watching, Diego, I said softly. I'm not going to put myself back in the position where I'm the one holding everything up. But I'll support you if you're really ready to change. I am, he replied, his voice stronger now. I'm done making excuses. The conversation ended with a sense of something new between us, something raw and real, but still fragile. I didn't know what would happen next, but I was willing to let him try, and that was the hardest part of all. Letting go of the bitterness, of the old patterns, and trusting that maybe, just maybe, he could be the person he said he wanted to be. I sat back in my chair after the call, taking in what had just happened. It felt like a turning point, but there was still a long road ahead. I had set clear boundaries, and I knew I needed to protect myself from falling back into old habits. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like my family wasn't lost. They might be a little broken, but there was a chance for us to rebuild. I wasn't sure where this would all lead, but I knew this. It would take honesty, patience, and real change. And for the first time in years, I wasn't going to settle for anything less. I had made my decision. I wasn't just going to protect my own heart. I was going to protect my family too, even if it meant showing them how to stand on their own. The weeks following my conversation with Diego and Jessica felt like the beginning of something new, though it wasn't without its challenges. They had agreed to start over, to take control of their finances and stop relying on me. But I wasn't about to dive back in and fix everything for them. This was their journey to take, and I was going to watch from the sidelines, offering advice, not money. Diego found a new job in biotech sales. It wasn't the glamorous position he'd imagined for himself, but it was stable. And for the first time in years, he seemed grateful for the opportunity. He called me a couple of times to talk through his transition, asking for guidance on how to approach clients and how to manage the different aspects of his role. I listened, offering suggestions, but I made it clear that I wasn't going to give him the answers. He had to learn to find them on his own. Jessica, too, began to rebuild her consulting business. She had a few clients lined up, but her reputation had taken a hit during the months when she and Diego had relied on me. Still, she was determined to make it work. She reached out to me a few times to talk about her marketing strategies and how to find new clients. Again, I offered my insights, but I didn't hold her hand. It was tough for her, especially with the financial strain, but she had to work for it. As they began adjusting to their new reality, I noticed a shift. They were both becoming more responsible. Diego was more mindful of his spending, and Jessica was actively seeking out clients instead of waiting for them to come to her. They were cutting back on luxuries and moving into a smaller home, downsizing to something more in line with their new budget. Even their daughter, Emma, was enrolled in a public school instead of the expensive private one they had previously chosen. It was humbling, but it was also a sign that they were taking ownership of their decisions. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one holding everything up. They were standing on their own 2 feet. It wasn't perfect, there were still bumps along the way, but it was progress. I spent more time with my mother during this period, trying to include her in decisions about the family's future. We sat down together to discuss her retirement plans and long-term security. I was careful not to overstep, but I made sure she knew that she had options. I wasn't going to let her fall victim to the same pattern I had. My success was not just mine. It was for all of us, even if they hadn't seen it that way before. One afternoon, as we were talking about her investments, I could see the shift in her too. She wasn't as passive in these conversations anymore. She was asking questions, making her own decisions. It was a relief. It was the first time I felt like I was truly helping her build a secure future without the weight of everyone else's expectations dragging me down. Then, one evening, Diego and Jessica invited me over for dinner. It was a simple meal, nothing extravagant, but it felt like a gesture of gratitude. They wanted to show me that they appreciated everything I had done for them, without taking it for granted. Diego poured me a glass of wine, and Jessica smiled across the table. "We know things haven't been easy," Diego began, "but we're getting there, slowly. We're still learning, but we're trying." "I see that," I said, feeling a small sense of pride in them. "You've both made a lot of progress." Jessica looked at me, a softness in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. "We wouldn't have gotten here without you, Carmen. I didn't realize what I was doing before. Taking everything for granted. It's not an excuse, but I see it now." "You're not alone in that," I said, trying to ease the tension. "We've all made mistakes. The important thing is that you're changing, and you're doing it on your own." Diego nodded, his expression serious. "And we're going to keep doing it. No more shortcuts. No more relying on you to fix it. This is our responsibility now." It felt like a turning point, one I hadn't expected to come so soon. I wasn't sure if everything had truly changed, but I was starting to believe it could. As the evening wore on, we talked about the future. There were still a lot of unknowns, but for the first time in a long time, there was a sense of mutual respect between us. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about something deeper, about trust and accountability. I left their house that night feeling lighter, not because the road ahead would be easy, far from it, but because, for the first time in years, I felt like we were on the same page. My family was beginning to understand what I'd been trying to say for so long. Things were far from perfect, but they were moving in the right direction, and that was enough for me, for now. As I pulled into my parking spot, my phone buzzed. I looked down expecting another message from one of them, but it wasn't. It was a message from my mom. "Mom, Carmen, I was thinking about what we talked about earlier. You're right. I can't rely on anyone else to take care of me. I want to make sure I'm secure for the future, and I want to make these decisions with you. I've been too passive for too long, and it's time I took charge. I'm proud of you, Carmen. You've taught me so much, and I want to keep learning from you." My heart swelled as I read her words. She was finally taking control of her life, too. Maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Not perfect, but okay. I smiled to myself as I set my phone down and walked inside. We weren't done, not by a long shot, but we were moving forward, together, and that for now was enough. 6 months had passed since the turning point in my family's financial drama. I could hardly believe how much had changed. There had been a lot of work, a lot of difficult conversations, and more than a few setbacks. But we had made it through, and the future, once so uncertain, was now a little clearer. Diego, for one, had come a long way. He was employed at a stable job in biotech sales, something he'd never imagined he'd be doing. But he had taken the opportunity seriously, learning everything he could and slowly building a new career. He called me regularly, asking for advice, not just about work, but about managing his finances and making better decisions. It was hard for me to believe how much had shifted in such a short time. The old Diego, the one who expected everything to be handed to him, was gone, replaced by someone who was determined to make things right. Carmen, I don't know how you did it all these years, he said one afternoon during one of our calls. I thought I had everything figured out, but now I see how much I've been living in a fantasy. You really made it all work, even when no one was noticing. I could hear the sincerity in his voice, and I was grateful to hear it. It's not about doing everything yourself, Diego, I said, trying to sound as understanding as I could. It's about learning to rely on yourself. That's something you've started to do, and that's all I ever wanted for you. Jessica had her own journey to take. Her consulting business was slowly rebuilding, though it was clear that her reputation needed mending. She had to start from scratch with clients, proving she could manage her own success without relying on me. And I made sure she knew that I wasn't going to step in and bail her out if things got tight. The toughest thing was watching her face that reality. Still, we began to talk more openly. Our conversations were more like collaborations now. She'd ask for advice on marketing strategies or how to approach potential clients, and I'd give her the insights I could. But I refrained from handing her anything too easy. I had to make sure she found her own way, even if it meant struggling a bit. Hey, I signed a new contract with a client today, she told me one evening, excitement in her voice. I'm finally getting back on track. It feels different, in a good way. I smiled, proud of her. I'm glad to hear it, Jessica. Keep going. It's all about consistency. As for my mom, we had become closer over the months, and our conversations had evolved. She had become more involved in her own financial decisions, asking me for advice, but also voicing her own opinions. She was finally taking ownership of her retirement planning, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't the only one looking out for her. We talked about how to grow her investments, how to ensure that her savings were secure, and how to make sure she could live comfortably without depending on anyone else. It felt like a partnership, and that was exactly what I had been striving for all along. But more than anything, what I noticed most was the respect that had started to grow between all of us. Diego and Jessica were no longer seeing me as the person who always cleaned up their messes. They were seeing me as an equal, someone who could help them, but also someone who had boundaries. They had learned, slowly but surely, that I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. I wasn't going to support their lifestyle without them putting in the effort to change. The most telling moment came when I visited Diego and Jessica's new, much smaller home, a townhouse they had downsized to after selling their old one. The house was modest, but there was something different in the air. There was a sense of pride in their eyes that hadn't been there before. They had done it. They had made the change themselves. We did it, Diego said, looking around. It's not much, but it's ours. And we're not drowning anymore. I nodded, feeling the weight of the journey we had all been on. You should be proud. You've earned it. Their daughter, Emma, was sitting in the living room, doing homework. She looked up and smiled at me, the shy smile she always gave when I came over. It wasn't the same girl who had been enrolled in private school just months before. Now she was thriving in the public school they had transferred her to. It was the change they had all needed. As we sat down for dinner, the conversation was light, no longer filled with tension or guilt trips, just a regular evening with family. We talked about small things, what was happening in our lives, how we were adjusting. There was no more hiding, no more resentment. We were all rebuilding, but we were doing it together. The next morning, I received a call from my mom. Carmen, I've been thinking, she said. You've taught me so much. I've been looking at my own savings, and I've realized I need to be more proactive. Thank you. I felt a wave of warmth spread through me. I'm proud of you, Mom. You've always had it in you. Over the next few months, as Diego and Jessica continued their journey, I remained involved, but from a distance. I provided advice, but I never crossed the line into helping financially. This was their journey to walk, and I wasn't going to take that from them. They had their independence now, and I wasn't going to undermine it by giving them handouts. But when it came to long-term planning for my mother, I was there. I knew that as long as she had someone in her corner, she would be just fine. I was no longer her caretaker, but her partner. 6 months later, our family had transformed. Diego had settled into his job, and he was now regularly reaching out for business advice. Jessica's consulting practice had gained momentum, and she and I had built a more open, respectful relationship. My mother, always the matriarch, was now contributing her voice to family decisions. The change wasn't just about money, it was about honesty, about rebuilding something that had been broken for far too long. Looking around at my family, stronger, more self sufficient, I realized that the lessons had been learned. We weren't perfect, but we were stronger together. We had faced our issues head on, and now we were walking forward as equals. It wasn't just a financial transformation, it was a personal one. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I had rebuilt my family, not by carrying their weight, but by teaching them how to stand on their own. And in doing so, I had found a new sense of peace for myself, one that came from knowing I had finally put my foot down and set the boundaries I had needed all along. We had survived the crisis, and now we were thriving in our new normal.